Yo, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie comic interview. It is your Caped Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our brand new friend, David Whalen of Correct Handed Comics. We're going to be breaking down The Offspring. We're going to be breaking down Shady Lady and so much more. He is in his 19th issue, going on his 20th issue of The Offspring, so there is quite a lot of ground to be covering. David, welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing great, Cody. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, how did you come into comic creating? What led you to creating this publishing label?
Yeah, so like so many other people in my situation, I grew up reading comic books. I love them, and I can remember going to the coin shop with my older brother, and there's Archie comic books and Mighty Mouse comics just sitting on the the shelves on the bottom shelf, and I'd pick them up and read them, and then graduated to high school. Graduated to superhero books, and just fell in love with it, and have been reading them ever since. I knew very young that I enjoyed drawing, enjoyed art, enjoyed trying to recreate as many Spider-Man, Superman, Captain Americas from the comic books that I got as I possibly could. And it just grew from there. I always loved reading, always loved writing, always loved drawing. And as I grew and got older and started to feel like I was, ready to go, I would say that it was after I graduated college the second time that I really felt like I was ready to start creating comic books. So about 6 years ago, I started doing some small indie stuff. Just like some anthology things and maybe a one issue here, one shot there, and decided that I was ready to start doing my own stuff. From there, I had a story that I wanted to tell, and always knew I wanted to tell it in my own way without any kind of interference or any kind of changes to the story. So I started drawing up The Offspring, which I had the first 10 issues in my brain for 20 years. So I started drawing it up and really liked what was happening and was really proud of the first issue and just kept rolling and snowballing from there. And now I'm working on issue 20. I've got a bunch of one shots. I've got
congratulations, that's awesome.
I've got a graphic novel. Just trying my best to create as much awesome, cool stuff as I possibly can.
So 6 years, you've came up with 19 issues, and that's not even counting all the one shots of the graphic novel. That's insane. How are you such a monster at this? You just keep creating. Like, do you ever experience like any sort of burnout, or is that just not a thing for you?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I have a very understanding wife and son and daughter who know that dad wants to get this done today, so I'm gonna lock myself in the den. That's what's happening. I'll be out and we'll play ball or go get games or whatever afterwards, but I got to get this done. So they're very understanding about the passion that I have for wanting to create comic books. I do get where I have to just kind of drop everything and say I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to draw. I'm not going to write. I'm going to take 24 hours and I'm going to rest. Usually that lasts about 10 hours. And then I jump right back into it. And I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do with that panel. Oh, that's what I want to do in that scene. So let me write that down real quick. And then it just keeps going from there. So I try to draw or write every single day. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm a full-time teacher. I'm an art teacher. So having that as my day job, especially as school is ending here, it's a crazy time. But it does afford me opportunities to be able to sit down in those breaks that teachers have from time to time to be able to really get a lot of stuff done. So really, it's just about time management.
And then you can make your students draw some of your panels for you. I'm hip to it. So
we're not quite there yet. I don't think some of them are there yet. So.
Is that what you went to college for? Was art?
Yeah, I got my associate's degree in Ohio from Sinclair Community College.
Let's go.
There for Dayton school. I got that, and I worked as a graphic designer for probably about 10 years. Still always wanted to know I wanted to do comic books. And then when I moved to Florida, it had to be 2000. And then decided after I met a nice girl and we decided it would be a little bit more serious than I thought it was going to be when we started. I said, I probably should go back to school and become a teacher. So went back to school for the second time and got my degree in art education and curriculum, and just started working from there. So after that, we decided to move to upstate New York, to where her family was from.
You gotta get out of Ohio. I get it.
Yeah, so I enjoyed Ohio, and I go back there. I have lots of family there, so I was just in Cleveland, just went to Cedar Point last weekend with my son. But then once we got to Ohio, once we got to New York, I started working full time as a teacher, and said, now it's time to do this. So, that I think it was that ability to be able to work for 10 years as a graphic designer, to be able to work for so long as a teacher, to be able to really hone my skill and my craft, and really work on the writing and really work on the stories, was a thing that some people would say that, maybe I started a little later than they would want to, but it was perfect timing for me, because now I'm all in. There's no better
time to start than now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your creative process look like being a one-man team? Like, do you lay the art first? Do you lay the script down first? What's that look like for you? What's that scribble pad look like for you when you're coming up with ideas?
Yeah, it's a mess is what it is, but it's a mess that I can read that nobody else can. And it's usually, I rarely write in scripts. I rarely write scripts. Usually, if it's a really complicated story, I'll do bullet points to know where I want to go and how I want to get there. But usually, it's done in the thumbnail process. So I'll thumbnail out each page, with plenty of room for edits and changing and all that kind of stuff. But once I have the idea in my brain about where I want to start, how I want to get there, and how I want to finish, it usually comes fairly quickly to be able to tell the story that I want to tell. And I especially with the Offspring, I started really worried about big explosions and fight scenes and car chases and all that, and as I started really getting through books 1 through 4, I realized that's not what this story is about. This story is about three young adults who have a lot of emotional problems, and it's not about fight scenes, and there are fights there. There are adventures that they go on. Yeah. But it's not about that. It's more about their emotional story. So once I kind of got over that idea of I don't need an explosion every third panel to make this an exciting story or make it an intriguing story, something that people would want to read, it really just started flowing from there, and really trying to break down the emotional content that these kids would have to deal with to be able to get through their lives. I wanted them to start off in a place for the reader to meet these kids in a place that was like the worst, like the lowest point of their lives.
They do. You do. Like, why go that direction? It seems like every character but Will. And I only read 2 issues, so I didn't get a chance to, if his backstory is maybe developed further, I didn't get a chance to read that, but it seems like the 2 characters, like, they have very severe issues that they're dealing with. Why go that direction with them?
So I wanted characters that were, when I came up with the story, I was 17 years old. And I'm not 17 years old anymore. So when I came up with them, I wanted these characters to be like people that I knew around me. Not saying that I knew a lot of people that were abused or anything like that, but I wanted them to have real struggles that weren't going to be solved after a 4-issue story arc. So struggles that weren't going to ever really be 100% finished. 100% dealt with. It was something that they would till the day they died. It was going to be something that they were going to have to deal with in their lives. So we start with Sarah being the first main character that we meet, and she's in prison. She'd been in prison for 2 years, and her life is not going well for her. And then Vince, we meet Vince, and he. Not to give up too much away, but I'm on issue 19 now, so to maybe reel people in, he's in a really low place, and he's just tried to commit suicide. So these 2 characters are not doing well. We meet, like you said, Will seems to be the character that does have it together. He's working at the school that these kids grew up in, because when they were taken away from their families, they were put in this alternative school that they started to realize that the 3 of them were very closely linked. Like, they felt a pull to each other.
Yeah.
And it looks like Will has it all together. I did something a little different with Will. As the series moves forward, you realize that there are more cracks in the system than
he's letting
lets
out
on.
Yeah.
So as the story progresses and we start to see where Will is struggling, he's just able to keep it together a little bit better than Sarah and Vince.
Okay.
So
That makes
as the story
sense.
progresses into more some of the issues, we start to see him break down, and his issues start to come forward a little bit more. So it's starting the characters off in the worst place in their lives.
Yeah.
One of the characters who's trying to keep it together and keeping it together fairly well, but it's hard to be able to keep that in, and that's something that I wanted to be able to really explore about people who are dealing with issues and try to push it down instead of really exploring it, really try to figure out what they can do to help themselves and others.
It seemed like you kind of followed that same path in Shady Lady as well, but we don't get that revelation until the very end. She's very angry at the world. You kind of see her taking like a different path, a different alternative from that pain. And just like she's out to like, it's just, you just see like it basically is like, I would say, how would you word this? Like every female out there, their redemption, like what they wish they would be able to just do and just get away with, like, getting catcalled and yanking the cigarette out of a dude's mouth and be like, I'm gonna tell your wife you're a piece of trash, or like, someone who did get, and it's been out for quite some time, right?
Yes.
So like seeing her kind of get her final like her final victory against the man who like assaulted her, and like seeing that in the end, like having that power, I thought that was like the way it was written was like, it was very like empowering, like being able to take the hurt that was dealt to you and being able to like see through the end, and not that everything should be dealt through like with vengeance, but like you were able to see that, you were able to see, because she wasn't ultimately the one that pulled the trigger.
She was able to manipulate the situation, but ultimately she didn't really have any control over what happened in the end. It just was, like you said, a kind of a full circle revenge story for her, and she was hoping that she would be able to look him in the eye and let him know that he had not beaten her. And then, because of his own actions, which I won't give away, but she ends up doing a full revenge. You're absolutely right. I tried to, like, I am in no way, shape, or form the voice of women. Like I did that. My goal was, I grew up with strong women. My mother, my grandmothers, my wife is a strong woman who has everything under control. They got it under control, and if they don't have it under control, they're strong enough to be able to ask for help, or to ask for assistance from anybody around them. But having those strong women as influences in my life, especially my mom, it was really where I kind of drew the characteristics from Shady Lady that would clearly not the fighting and all that stuff, but because I don't think my mom's ever thrown a punch in her life. Sorry.
I'm sure if she needed to. I'm sure if she needed to, like over her children, she could though.
Sorry, Cody.
You're fine. You're fine. Hey, we're humans, Are you supposed to blow up holding it in?
Yeah. No, but to be able to have that, those characteristics in her was really something that helped me to figure out her character and her arc and the story as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So we are looking at 19 issues for a whole for Offspring. Now, something very interesting happens. We see, two kids get abducted. That's kind of like what draws Sarah, Vincent, and Will together. And it just takes a really dark turn. We see the cult leader. I'm not exactly sure if he was given a name or not, but
he does have a name, but I did not name him in the story.
Okay. So what is his name?
I'm not gonna tell you.
All right. I always try to get what I can, but
he's got a follow-up story coming up, probably issue 36, 37. He'll be back.
Dang, you got this fleshed out. So
I've got it all figured out.
This guy is just ruthless. I earlier I was talking. I was like, he's like pretty much like the Thanos of this story, because he sacrifices his daughter without a second's hesitation. You said you got some gruff over that as well, right?
I did. Some people said it was too much. And my response was, he's the bad guy. He's got to do bad things.
Yeah.
If there's no consequences, if there's no real danger, what's the point?
I always say art is like supposed to move you. You're like, whether it moves you in a good way or a bad way, like, you know what I mean? It did its job. It's that scene wasn't supposed to make you feel happy. Yeah. He's gutting his daughter. It's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
Because it shows you the danger the children are in. It presses that button that is his name like Tavis? I forgot how to pronounce it. The taller dude with the younger kid's brother started with a T. Oh, you muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Tavis. I didn't want to cough on screen.
You coughed too hard and muted it. Dang. So you said it was what? Yeah. So man, what's the story behind Tavis as well? Any inspirations for him? Like, you could tell he's kind of just like in too deep looking for his brother.
Yeah, Tavis is based off a dude. When I worked in Ohio, I worked actually in Ohio and Florida and New York. I worked at the Outback, the restaurant, and there was a guy that worked there named Tavis, who was just the funniest, most intense dude I'd ever met in my life. And when I met him, I'm like, so this guy's got to be in a comic book. So a lot of his, like, Tavis, the character in The Offspring, isn't particularly funny, not yet anyway. He has a couple other bits and a few other stories coming up, issues 5 and 6. He's in there also. He's again kind of the catalyst for what happens in Sarah's individual story for 5 and 6. But he was definitely an inspiration for that comic book character, and I want to be able to use him a little bit more later. But right now, focusing on those 3 main characters is my goal.
Does he know he's in the book?
I haven't seen him in 30 years. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's cool though. That it's like a little tribute for him. So I had a chance to read issues 1 and 2. Kind of give us like a brief, like if you can, like a brief summary of where we're at leading up to issue 20.
So these characters have been emotionally and physically abused, and they are brought together at an alternative school where they realize that they are mentally, psychically kind of linked to each other. They feel a strong pull to each other, and as they grow up, they start to realize that they develop powers that are based off of how they were abused, or how they were neglected, or how they were treated as children. And as they grow, their powers grow also. As they start to, when we meet them at first, they start to kind of come back together after years apart. They start to realize that they can kind of sense each other, and feel each other, and know where they are without them knowing where they are, kind of thing. So, and as they start to realize this happening, they realize that Tavis comes in, and his brother had been kidnapped. Will, who showed some psychic prowess before we met him, who had worked with the sheriff to be able to solve some crimes in the community. Tavis comes to him and asks him to help him find his brother. So through the process of them investigating where Tavis's brother may have gone, they stumble across this cult who is kidnapping children for nefarious reasons, of course. And as we start to learn more about the cult, we start to realize that the cult leader isn't really the one in charge. There's a demon-like entity that's kind of puppeteering behind him, that has kind of pulling the strings of this cult leader and the cult for bigger reasons than just the cult leader gaining immortality. And as the story progresses on, we start to see that there are more of these godlike demon type characters who have been manipulating our 3 main characters their entire lives. For what reason, we don't know yet. As we get into issue 10, 11, 12, we start to see a little bit more, start to take more of a cosmic vibe to it, where we start to see how these godlike demon type characters are trying to manipulate our 3 main characters. So one of the reasons that I came up with these characters in the story was to be able to cross genres as many times as I could. So when the story starts, it's very much horror thriller, And then as we continue on, it starts to become a little bit more action adventure. Then it becomes like 80s fight scenes and things like that. And then it starts to become more sci-fi. As we get into issue 2 with, season 2, issue 13, it's my first time travel story with these characters. So it does like take a whole bunch of twists and turns that I think people will enjoy if they give it a shot.
So what drove you to kind of do that, to spice it up with like crossing different genres and stuff, as opposed to kind of just sticking with one?
I just love different genres, and I knew that these characters and their exploits could give me the ability to be able to cross into different genres. Sorry again, Cody.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I'll get rid of it, I promise.
So if you want, you can go ahead. Like we could just edit this part out, and you could just kind of.
Sure. Sorry about that, man.
No, you're good. I do a post-production cleanup, so it's just for the hey, people listening live, you're getting an exclusive cough.
You get exclusive coughing.
Listen while you can, because it's gonna get cleaned up soon. So
good. I'm glad to hear that. Good.
Yeah. No, it's all good. For any like audio platforms, what I do is I'll cut it up, I'll clean it up, and then it'll be, they won't even be able to tell. So was it hard, like doing that, like just like walking that line, like, was it hard to kind of change up, going from like the horror suspense to action?
I think that for me, knowing what I wanted to do with the characters and where they were going, it was easy to kind of weave it in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Cody, I'm sorry, I can't get rid of this cough.
No, you're good. You're good.
And I ran out of water. Can I run and get water real quick?
Go ahead.
I apologize. Again.
Sometimes when the interview is just too hyped, and it gets too hyped. No worries, guys. How's everybody in the chat doing? If you guys are interested, leave any questions, and we will be sure to ask David his thoughts and opinions on whatever you want to ask. I really enjoyed reading issue 1 and 2. I thought The Offspring was an outstanding collection of books as well. And since David is back, another interesting piece is you said I was like the second person to figure this out, so it made me feel really good. But these are named after song titles as well.
Yeah, each story has the name of it is a song title or a line of a song, something that songs are creators that I love. So, like I said, you're only the second person to notice or say it out loud to me. So
you left off. We were looking at doing time traveling with these guys. Where else are we heading to lead us to issue 20? Like, where do they travel to? Where do they see?
So the overall story arc with time, there's a big one coming up. So I am trying to get to issue 23, where they are searching for right now they're in the process, issues 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. They are searching for their missing friend, who we see at the end of season 1, which is issues 11, 12, or 9, 10, and 11. Then they're on the road to be able to find their lost friend. They realize through flashbacks and through some manipulation of their friend that's missing, that they have completely forgotten about the fourth member of their group, their little clique.
Mm-hmm.
Who they've really only met once. But when they met this fourth member, when they were kids, 11 or 12, still at the alternative school, the second they were all in the same room together, their powers just kicked on. Like almost uncontrollable for them. And in a circumstance where it was very lucky that their powers did kick on, because they were in trouble at the time.
Okay.
So then they realized that this character, Megan, had been kidnapped, and they had forgotten about her, and I'll explain how later on. But now they're on the search for her, and as they start to find her and realize that why she was kidnapped, what she's being used for, the character that is using her is the bad guy from the first time travel story, where they go back into the American Civil War.
Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. That is awesome. You're going a little bit all over with it.
Yeah. So the main villain from that story arc is going to be the main arching story villain for the next big story arc coming on, where they start to time travel, and they start to realize, I don't want to give too much away, but they start to realize that the further they go back in time, the more powerful they become.
Ooh.
So it's as they go back into time, they'll start jumping further and further and further back, and I'll explain why when we get there. But to a point where they start to understand who they really are.
So, like,
why they really have these powers.
As the artist side of you, how hard was that to accommodate the different eras you were traveling to? Like, did you have to do like a lot of extensive like researching on like the different type of clothes and like building designs that were like kind of prominent?
I started with the Civil War because I love the American Civil War, and it was something that I knew I could really sink my teeth into and really do well, because I had been studying the Civil War for many years and had lots of research, done lots of research, and had lots of books on it. So starting with the American Civil War is kind of like me making sure that I was to be able to tread water before I started joining.
That you could do it successfully.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotcha.
So once we start to time travel more, it'll start getting to things, and I try to pick things that again I'm very familiar with, like I'm a big fan of like murder mysteries and things like that. So there's a serial killer that I really like. I don't want to give too much away, but they jump into that time of that serial killer.
Oh, that's cool.
They jump into certain aspects of. I don't want to say too much, but they just keep going back further into time, and it's going to be really fun to get there. I can't wait. My hope is that by middle of next year, I'm into the time travel. I want to be able to get to issue 24 by the end of this year.
Okay.
So being able to have issue 25 and then leap us into that quantum leap, if you want to.
So how long does an issue take you to create from start to finish?
I can get a full issue done in about 2 months.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And you're not funding it at all through a Kickstarter, through any of that means. So like, is this digital only? Do you have physicals? Like, how are you going about like publishing this?
Yeah, I'm pretty traditional with my pencils and inks. I love the tactile, be able to pick up my pencil and be able to draw and be able to ink over it. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure all my inks are nice and clean physically, and then I'll go in and scan it and I'll clean it up. Gosh, Cody, again, I'm sorry.
You're fine, no worries.
Gosh, that's exactly what your viewers want to hear, me coughing.
You know what, I'll tell you what, I'm grateful that my microphone's working, like my $500 microphone and not my like $100 one, and I don't have to hold it like this the entire, so I was grateful that like it only took one audio check for it to work. Anything after that, smooth sailing. You could cough this whole entire time and I'm gonna be a lot happier than I was earlier, because it's like, for me, I'm okay with like things happening on your end, because I'm not in control of you coughing, but I'm in control of my equipment
right now.
Yeah. No. Well, what I mean is like, I like, to a degree, it's my equipment. So if the interview's shitty because of that, that's my fault. Sure. You know what I mean? You can't help that you're coughing. That's not on me. And if I was coughing, like vice versa, but like technical difficulties on my end, like, is the most embarrassing thing, because I'm the host. That's not supposed to happen. My microphone going out. I'm here for that.
All right, I think I'm back to good.
All right, let's do this. So, self-publishing. You said you do physical as well, or just all digital?
I have physical copies. I try to. You can buy them like if you go to correcthandcomics.com. There are links to physical books and digital. But I do most of my selling at conventions and through like Amazon. A lot of people scoff at Amazon because they're like a big demon, company, and they're the evil of the world. And I don't necessarily disagree, but they can help me sell my comic books. So
yeah. I mean,
I'll sign that contract. That's fine.
So, do you do like print on demand? Like, do you have like someone, like a printer that you go through? Like, how does that operation work for you as well?
I usually print fairly small runs because I use them for conventions. Usually, if someone wants, isn't sure about this book or that book, what I'll do is I'll usually give them like a free digital copy of, say, one of my one shots, and see if it's something that they like, and then hopefully like, hey, if you like that, go to the website and see if there's something else you might want to buy. I realize that an ongoing series is different as an indie creator is a difficult sell for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because who knows? You know, I'm working on issue 20 right now, but who knows if my plan is 50. But a lot of people will say, well, I don't know if he's going to get all the way to 50. I'm not gonna jump on board for a story that I'm never gonna see the end of. But I would say I'm come hell or high water. You'd have to chop off both my arms for me not to get to 50 at this point.
Yeah, and the
I'm
stubs.
almost halfway there.
Yeah.
And even if somebody did chop off my arms, I'd put the pencil on my mouth and I'd still keep going.
Yeah, let's go.
So the one shots that I did were really just a way to be able, like a bridge, to be able to give people a chance to be able to see my style, read some of my other stories in one shot form, and not have to dive all into an ongoing series.
So
and see if it was something that they liked, and if they like my style, come back for more.
why not do a Kickstarter though? Why not, like, you know, try to do something that'll help put like a couple extra bucks in your pocket?
Yeah, you know, more eyes is always better than less eyes. I think that's something that I will probably do in the near future. It just hasn't happened yet.
I think going to a Kickstarter with like 25 books and being like, I have this many ready. I don't know many people that has that capability. At that point, you could do like 6 graphic novels and still have some left over.
Yeah, I do actually. Let me show you the covers for those.
He's like, speaking of those.
So here is issues 1 through 4, the trade paperback. Here's volume. Let me see if I can find it. Volume 2. This is issues 5 through 10. 5 through 10. Then volume.
And those are like 24-page issues too, so that's like what, 80 in a volume.
Yeah, I try to get and then this one right here, there was only 3 issues to this story arc for the Landside saga. So what I tried to do was, what I did was I put Shady Lady at the end of this one. So this one has 3-issue story arc of the Offspring and one of the one-shots in there. So, and then
is that Landslide Fleetwood Mac?
You what?
Is Landslide Fleetwood Mac?
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. So this one, let me see. This one was like here's one from, and it was a little obvious, but I liked it. So this one, this is volume 4, the time travel story. So this one's called Rebel Yell.
Okay, yeah. So how do you come up with these song titles, like chapter names or issue names?
I've been a musician most of my life also, so I feel pretty versed in music. So I try to, as I'm writing the story, try to find the vibe and try to find a story or a title of a.
So the song, like, almost like not made for the issue, but kind of fits it.
Yes, yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, and people have asked me, are you a fan of the band? And I'll say, yeah, but it has nothing to do with the other than the name.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with that. But yeah, and it's fun for me to be able to find those different song titles from different genres too. So there's some rock in there, there's some pop in there, there's some country in there, there's some whatever. To be able to find something that fits the story is always fun for me. And when people notice it, makes it really fun also.
Yeah, no. I if anything, I will say I have a knack for detail here and there. Not all the time, but here and there. So what are some of the biggest things you would say, like, helps you, like, just doing this all on your own, one-man show? You're the artist, you're the letterer, you're the writer, the publisher. Like, what would you say, like, is some of the benefit to that? I mean, outside of having, like, the creative control, like the obvious thing.
I think that one of them is, if I change something, I don't have to talk to anybody about it. I can just do it. So sometimes the process is tricky as one person. My wife and I, she's always open to listen. She's always got an ear to listen. I say, hey, let me run this by you. If it doesn't make sense, just tell me. She doesn't know comics. She doesn't, she's not a writer, but she's a very smart lady. So young lady. So when I say, hey, does this make sense to you from point to point to point? Does this make sense? She goes, yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Or she'll go, I think you can do better than that, or whatever it is.
She's honest though, right?
Yeah, she's very honest with me. She goes, yeah, I like that, but I think I saw that in something else that I was watching. I'm like, oh, maybe it's soaked into my brain from something else, so I'm gonna scrap that. I'm gonna go to this. So sometimes being a one-man band is difficult because you don't have people to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, that would be complicated, and especially like when you're creating it, it's hard to kind of think outside that box. So like having that second pair of eyes to be like, yeah, I don't know about this, like that's essential. So it's you're at least lucky that you have your wife to do that for you. But you're right, I could almost see like how troublesome that could be, like, you know, not having that person be like, well, I don't know how to write out of this, like, what's your thoughts? Like, you know, that would be pivotal in some cases.
Yeah, it is, and she does a good job of helping me to stay out of my bubble, to make sure that while I'm writing it for me, you know, for me, if it's something that I enjoyed, then hopefully something other people will enjoy also. But to be able to make sure I'm paying attention to looking past my own nose, and making sure I'm also having a broader reach for people who might not be me. To want to buy the book.
So, what's the hardest part of this for you? Would you say like the inking, the coloring, the writing, the editing? You know, what would be the single hardest part for you?
Well, editing. I have a great guy. I've had a couple great editors over the last 19 issues, but I have a guy right now, Ryan Crow, who's worked with me on some other books and done some other stuff with me, some small press stuff. And let's see, issue 13, the editor who was working with me before had to bow out for whatever reason, and I called this other guy up and said, hey, you know, we work together well. Do you want to help me edit this book? And he's been great to be able to say, hey, you know, it's usually by the time he gets it, it's colored and lettered, because I know the story I want to tell.
Yeah.
I just want to have somebody else read it before I put it out to make sure, you know, that it makes sense. And usually my wife reads it also before. But he's been a great help to be able to say, hey, this is telling the story, but I bet you could say it differently that would pop a little bit better. So that's something that he's really good at, that helps me with that kind of thing. And with issue 19 that I just put out, there was a couple things from like, hey, this does tell the story and I like it, but what about this? And I go, oh, that's great. Yeah, let's do that. You know, as long as it doesn't change the overall story.
So what's like an average launch look like for you then? Like when you are getting ready to launch like issue 20, what's that going to look like for you? Do you contact comic book shops? Do you do a big like party release? Like how's that go for you?
I try to, where I am in upstate New York, I am an hour and a half away from any comic book store in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
So getting my books into comics on a regular basis is very difficult. So for me, launching the books really looks like social media. To be able to get it into as many eyeballs as I can from as many different platforms as I can. Mm-hmm. And as I roll it out, when I know I'm going to be near a comic book shop, bringing it to them. So I travel to Ohio regularly. So I have a brother-in-law who really helps me. He's actually really good at it, I would say. Yeah, I would say he's one of the person that helps me the most to be able to really get the book out.
That's awesome.
He'll take the book to comic book shops for me and pick up whatever money I may make. But it's really is one of those things that is very difficult up here. So those print on demand and digital copies are really the lifeblood for me right now.
Okay.
And I hope to be able to get more. And what I hope to do is by 2023 to be able to get all of my trade paperbacks into every single comic book shop that I can reach.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's so awesome to meet someone who's done so much in 6 years and just has such big plans to keep going. I mean, what's the future hold for you? Like, where do you see yourself after you do the Offspring? The 50th issue comes around. What are you working on next?
So I, I'm doing the Offspring. You've already mentioned that I put out one-shots and 4-issue miniseries and the graphic novel. Sorry. Let me start that over. So, as you mentioned, I have other things that I do, one-shots and graphic novels and 4-issue miniseries. So I'm actually working on my next 100-page graphic novel right now that I hope to. The story has adjusted, but I am pretty excited about it. It's more of a sci-fi fantasy, but I think it's got a lot of meat to it, and I think it's a good story. and the overall theme is like that death is inevitable.
Okay.
So to be able to wrap that into a sci-fi story, one that I think is fun, fun while talking about how death is inevitable, but still making it fun, is something that I found really fun to be able to do and be able to flex my muscles in a different way, and more of a spaceships and aliens kind of a way.
I think there's a lot of cool things you could do with that too. I mean, it just seems like there's so much room to kind of just fit like anything you want to, like,
yeah,
because like so much goes against it. So many people are afraid of dying, like, so they do everything they can to prevent it, but in the end it's inevitable. There's nothing you can do to stop it.
Nothing you can do. It happens to all of us. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to starting, I hope, this summer, to be able to really start getting some pages going.
Cool.
I think it's going to be black and white, and I think I'm going to really try to I just want to make sure, like we were talking about earlier, about perfection is never it's not something you're ever gonna reach, especially in your own work, but I really want to make sure before I start it, like with the Offspring, I know what all 50 issues are going to look like. I already have the stories. I know my main beats. I know all that stuff. If there's new things that I think of as I go, I can weave them into the fabric of what I've already got. But for something like this, 100-page graphic novel, I really want to make sure I hone in on that theme, to be able to and give each character a story arc and all those things. So it's already gotten to the point where I realized, the characters that I'm coming up with, I think, are really different, and really something that while we can recognize the archetype, you can recognize these characters in other sci-fi things. I think the twists and turns that I have on how they act and what they do and how they react to some of the situations that I'm going to put them in. And I think I have some really cool, like, sci-fi
I'm hyped
stuff
for it. Yeah, let's go.
There was one idea that I had. I'm clear, I'm not going to say it out loud, but I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen this in a sci-fi movie, TV show, anything. So to be able to squeeze this like really sci-fi idea into it, I think is really fun. But I want to make sure before I start that one that I've got all my I's crossed and my T's dotted before I do all that.
So have you ever seen Final Fantasy: The Spirits Awaken, or is it Spirits Within? I gotta look at it. I highly recommend that. I think it's like a Blu-ray or a DVD. Let me look up the name completely. It's a sci-fi, and it's kind of like death is inevitable type of, like, that's not the premise of it, but that's like it's very like, The Spirits Within. So it's a 2001 film. I recommend checking that, dude. It sounds like kind of like a similar concept without being that concept. I think you'd really dig it, especially if you like the sci-fi stuff. Yeah, but that's so awesome. I'm so excited for you. That sounds like such a crazy endeavor, to 100-page after coming out with so many issues back to back to back. Man, that's awesome. So I got to ask you real quick before we start wrapping things up. As someone who's been doing this for 6 years, working on your 20th issue, you have so many one-shots in between graphic novels and everything else. What would you say to anyone who's new, getting into the field, struggling with getting their idea, like from their mind to the pen, to the page, to the screen? What would you say to them to kind of help motivate them to get going? What works best for you, as someone who just keeps churning it out?
Yeah. I would say, like we talked about a little bit, that you're oftentimes your own worst critic. So, trying to reach this level of perfection, especially starting off, there are artists that have worked for 50 years that have never reached perfection, writers or, creators of anything that have never reached perfection. You could have, I try to remind myself that there are a lot of people that really love Star Wars, but there are a lot of people that really hate Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
So you're not going to please everybody. And I think about things like there's a YouTube channel that I like because it reminds me that even people who get paid $1 million to do it still mess up. It's called Everything Wrong With. So they take movies and they point out all the things that are wrong.
Okay, yeah.
In that movie. And it's like The Godfather, like movies of these the highest level of storytelling you could possibly get in movies, and they're pointing out the mistakes.
Yep.
So to be able to, for me, as a middle-aged man who just wants to tell fun stories, I'm not worried about perfection. I'm worried about fun. A fun story, or an intriguing story, or a thought-provoking story, or something that'll make you think, something that might make you mad, something that might make you happy, something that might frustrate you because you want a character to do better or do different or whatever it is. I think that for anybody starting off, for me, I wish somebody would have said, don't worry about mistakes. You're gonna make them. It's gonna happen. So just keep moving forward. Learn from the mistake. Make sure the same mistake doesn't happen over and over and over again. And that's what I try to do. You know, if I notice that maybe I don't want to point out mistakes I've made, but if I make a mistake, I try to make sure that I don't make that mistake twice.
Yeah.
And it's worked well for me. You know, it's as a artist first. For any artist, I'd say that if you want to create comic books, you might want to learn how to write. And for any writers out there, if you want to make comic books, you better learn how to draw, which that one's easier said than done, of course. Because I've seen a lot of people who are in my position who are writers and say, I've got this great story, I just don't have an artist. Will you do it? And I said, well, yeah, $100 a page. And they go, I don't have any money. I said, no.
Well, I don't have any art. I don't know what to tell you.
Unless you have a partner who is 100% in on your thing, then you're probably you're on your own, unless you have $1 million to be able to fund it, which is great. That's great too.
Yeah. And then you're not worrying about the struggle. You're not worrying about asking for advice because you have the money.
Yeah, if you got the money to do it. But most people don't. So, just if you're gonna do it, do it. Don't wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment.
Perfect moments now.
Do it. Yeah.
Let's go. I appreciate that advice. Like I said, every time I talk to someone, I always feel like there's gonna be a nugget of truth, nugget of wisdom they can offer that I haven't heard before. And this interview was just ripe with it. I love how far you've taken this series, how far you plan on taking it, and just the new stuff you plan on working. I hope I can get you back on the show to talk about your other works. I'm trying to work in pretty busy schedule, but I'm trying to work in like this single comic breakdown where you talk about the issue like 5-10 minutes, pull up like what we're doing now, but actually have your comic book scrolling through and just cutting the breeze about your comic, like looking at the pages with the audience. So maybe we can do that, because you got 19 of them, so there's a lot to work with. But with that being said, guys, it is time for us to wrap it up. It is Sunday night. It is time for me to get ready to call it a night. We're going to be playing some Mario Kart with the community tonight before I call it night because I am exhausted after a weekend filled with indie comic interviews. We are keeping it geekly with our good friend David. And yeah, guys, I hope you have a good night. But most importantly, keep it geekly as well.